Hi, in this video, I'm going to demonstrate a technique I use to try and stop students from cheating in their online assessments. For example, here is a question and students can just copy the entire narrative, even the multiple answer, and then just paste it into ChatGPT. And ChatGPT does give a good answer, although one of the options is wrong, but the student will still be able to pass. And if I put it through Google's Bard, it actually gives the correct answer. Right, so here is the text. Now, in order to stop students from being able to copy and paste this should be converted to an image. But before I convert it to an image, I need to present this text in such a way that even if one does optical character recognition or takes a photo of it and then does an OCR, that it becomes very difficult for the student to actually copy this and put it into Bard or ChatGPT or the like. So what I'm going to do is make this all in bold. Right, so there is the text. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand it a bit. So I just go to advanced and I just increase the spacing a little bit. Now you don't have to follow this exactly the way I'm doing it, but this is what I find works the best. All right, so here is the narrative for the question. It's very legible. Notice that the font is bold and thick. So now what I'm going to do is just put a disclaimer above the text. Right, I've put this disclaimer here so that you know what is coming next. So it says here, the narrative below has the question. In order to stop students from using generative AI, ChatGPT, Bard, etc., the question has been interleaved with other text. Please ignore the text that is in the lighter font. The text that is in bold is the text for your test. The text that is smaller and in gray must be ignored. Also ignore the zigzags. Okay, so that will make sense in a second. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to interleave this text with nonsense text. Now ChatGPT and Bard and that, they have large language models which they use to predict what the next word would be. So if I just put nonsense here, if I add the word not before like, for example, now it says the student would not like to do a study. The generative AI model would probably ignore the word not because it's not expected in that sentence. So I've got to come up with ideas that would still be processed or expected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a theme that runs through this entire question, but actually it's total nonsense. What I mean by that is it's not going to be part of the question. So the first thing is I'm going to use a smaller font and I'm going to strike through it, and you'll see why I do that in a moment. I still need the student to be able to read the intelligent part of the question, the wanted part of the question, and be able to differentiate from the unwanted. Remember that I don't want the student to use the nonsense part, so that's why I've put a strike through or put it in a smaller font. So I'm going to generate some nonsense, but the nonsense is still something that ChatGPT or Google Bard would still take seriously. All right, so let's have a look at this. Originally, this was going to be a study on the relationship between hearing loss and loud music, and more specifically, different genres of music if they are related to more reversible hearing loss. So that is the purpose of the study. So now what I've done is I've created some nonsense, and the nonsense is now about creating a sound bomb for winning a war and using the sound bomb and using the noise as a weapon. So now, in order to confuse ChatGPT or Google Bard, I must keep with this theme running through the text. I'm not going to just put random stuff, because if it's random, the language model that ChatGPT uses would compute that it's nonsense. Therefore, I'm trying to confuse it by creating a text that seems to correlate all the way through, even though half of it is just junk. Okay, so now I've interleaved the wanted text with unwanted text, but the unwanted text is still keeping within a theme, because originally the study was about loud music and reversible hearing loss, and now I've introduced things like using this for a sound bomb, a type of noisy weapon in the battlefield, and now I've introduced a new variable such as, does the higher noise also cause a heart attack? And again, talking about the battleground in the warfield. The wanted text said her research shows that there is reversible hearing loss. I just put an IR in front of the reversible. So now it's irreversible. So that changes the whole point of the study. And also I've changed who the study is going to be on, because it was going to only be on adults, but now I'm saying it's adults and infants and dogs. All right, so you can see that I've interleaved the study with some nonsense, but keeping within a theme, so that if you do read the nonsense, it does kind of link the earlier text with the later text. Now, some tricks that I use is wherever there are numbers, add some noise. So Originally, the study was going to play music for 20 minutes at a volume of 95 decibels. Now it's 2000 minutes at 195 decibels. And here by the number of participants, it was 10 and now it's 10,000. I'm going to copy this text and now ask some of the questions that I would have asked the students. All right, so I've pasted the study into a chat window here and I said, what is the research question? And ChatGPT says, is there a relationship between exposure to loud music and sound bombs in a war zone? You can see it becomes nonsense. ChatGPT will provide an answer based on both the unwanted text and the wanted text. If I say how many participants are in the study, it now says 50,503. If I say how many genres of music, you can see that it's listed additional genres, which I put there as nonsense. Is this a good study? Now, it actually was a good study, but now because of the nonsense, it's now an unethical study, and a whole story here about animal testing, including dogs in the study, raises ethical questions, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, write a hypothesis for the study, and the hypothesis is also nonsense, talking about a war zone, etc. Google Bard didn't do much better. It started to just provide general answers about general studies and a general amount of how many participants should be used in a study. So I could not use the responses from Google Bard or ChatGPT to answer the question correctly, which means that the students would not be able to use the responses. Okay, so this is working in confusing the chatbots, but how do you stop the students from just editing the text? Because they could just edit this and remove the unwanted from the wanted. Right, so before I convert it to an image, I'm just going to add a little bit of noise to stop the OCR from working. So I'm just going to take the pen tool here, and I'm just going to add some zigzags, just like this. All right, so now I just need to convert this to an image. You can use the print screen or you can use the snipping tool. Now, in this case, I'm using Blackboard. It doesn't allow me to just paste the image, so I just have to go and locate the file. Right, so instead of the text being as follows, where the students can just copy and paste it into the chatbots, so the text will now be presented like this. I know that this is quite exotic and probably quite extreme, but nevertheless, this is working at the moment. Now, what about running an OCR? So a student could effectively just copy the entire image and try to convert it to text. All right, I'm going to use capture to text to try and perform an OCR. Keeping in mind that this process does take some time, so the students will not only have to deal with the time delay, but also this is totally garbled text. They wouldn't be able to use it. Here is Adobe Acrobat Pro, and I'm going to do a scan. I'm going to recognize the text in this image, and I can't even get a cursor here to grab the text. Let me try from the bottom, try run it a second time. All right, so there you can see it's almost impossible to even get the text into the copy paste. And this is what it provided, so pretty much nothing. Thanks to some of the comments on my videos, I've also been advised that people can use cameras to do a image to OCR. Now, I have done that, and this is what the output looks like. Right, so this is what the image to OCR app provided. You can see that it did a very good job of converting the image to OCR. And if I had to copy and paste that into a Word document, you'll see that there are still some errors. But note that it's added all the nonsense text, the unwanted text. For example, here it's talking about the sound bomb, there it's talking about noise weapons. So it managed to deal with the zigzags, but it could not deal with the fact that there was unwanted information in the text. So this would be very time consuming for a student to try and decipher this and rephrase this for ChatGPT. So is this foolproof? Not exactly. If students are very fast typers, they could type out the question into ChatGPT or Google Bard. So that is why I recommend making the question, the text, very verbose, so that there's a lot of additional information provided in the question, and that makes it more difficult and more time consuming for the student to type that out manually. The other thing is a student could also do a voice to text conversion, meaning they could read the wanted text out into a microphone and then do a conversion like that. Keeping in mind that all these hacks require time, and that is what the students do not have because these are timed assessments. So I know this is a pretty outlandish approach to dealing with this problem, and hopefully we will have a new education system that does not have this problem because we won't be asking students these type of questions. We'll rather be working with the AI rather than trying to stop the students from using it. But in the meantime, this is what I'm using, so I hope it's helpful, and thanks for watching, and cheers.